Welcome to Professionals and Coffee, where we delve into the world of public relations and integrated marketing. I'm your host, Carolina Salinas, and today we have a special guest with us, Martin Waxman, digital and social media strategist, LinkedIn learning instructor, and digital marketing professor. Joining me is Tirla Chan Kaur, a public relations student from Humber College with a passion for building meaningful connections between people, brands, and ideas. Welcome, Martin and Tirla Chan.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn from your experiences and Martin's as well.
Well, thank you. Nice meeting you, Trilla Chen and Carolina. Great seeing you again after a number of years. I guess the last time was in a classroom during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Or just before the pandemic, right? Because we started that semester in person.
In person, and we finished that course online because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
You're right.
So, Martin, you have had such an impressive career in PR and digital strategy. Can you take us back to the beginning? What first drew you to public relations, and how did you get into the PR industry?
Yes, if I could only remember. No, just kidding, because it's been a long time. I started out actually in arts and entertainment. So I started out as a performer and a TV writer and a film writer and producer. And I was doing that for the first part of my career. I was actually working on a TV show as a staff writer, and it was canceled. And my wife is also in film as a documentary director and producer. And so we had one child and another one on the way. And I had no work and not too many prospects. So I thought, okay, what have I done over the years? And I had worked a bit as a publicist. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to try this. And so I hung out my shingle. I rented or sublet a very small portion of an office with a film distributor I knew, thinking that maybe they'd hire me. Luckily, they did at least give me a couple of projects. I just started calling people I knew and started getting more clients, doing more film and entertainment publicity work. And then that changed to the agency side when I went and joined an agency, started my own agency, and kind of moved into digital marketing and communications. And really, Carolina, when we first met, I was doing a lot more in the digital realm rather than working at an agency. So that's kind of the progression. And honestly, Trilla Chen, if I imagine myself, so the young Martin looking ahead, I would not have predicted this pathway at all. But looking back, kind of makes sense.
A lot of people that we had a guest as in our classes, like a guest speaker, I heard this thing a lot that they didn't expect to go into the industry, and then they end up going there, and then they loved it.
Yeah, and for me, I went back to school because I didn't study PR and communications. I got my master's in communications management. Actually, I think I just finished before your class, Carolina. I wanted to learn about, it took me a long time to learn it, but I thought if I'm teaching more, I really should have a foundation in the theory, especially in communications theory, but also in business strategy and marketing, different things like that. And going back to school was fantastic, even though I was the oldest student in the class, but that's okay.
That doesn't matter. I mean, learning is a constant. And I remember by that time, you were very passionate. By that time, it began the AI topic.
Yes.
And you were very passionate about it. And I remember you encouraged us read more about AI because this is the future. And right now we're in that future, right?
I know it's funny, isn't it? But that's something I really got interested in when I was doing my master's. So around 2016, 17, 18. And I started reading a lot of books And it was very difficult to understand language because I don't have a computer science background or a statistics background. So I had to read pages over and over and over and look up things and look them up again and then look them up again. Finally, it started to make a little bit of sense. And then here we are. Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear how your journey has been so far. So looking back, was there any moment early on that made you realize that PR was the right path for you?
That's a great question. I think after about a year or a year and a half, after I stopped working in entertainment, and I realized that I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I was still doing a lot of writing. At that point, it was very, very traditional writing. It was press releases. And I loved media relations. And I found, okay, I think this is something I could do for a long, long time. In fact, I continued it, although, again, that direction just shifts. One, because communication shifts. So when I was doing it, we were at first faxing out news releases to people. And I would print, there was a print to fax program that you could get for your computers. So I'd get the news release ready, and instead of printing a copy, I would print it to a list of fax numbers. And then in the morning, I would see which ones went through, which ones didn't, and started to do my follow-up. So that quickly changed to email and then to more digital types of communications and social media. But I think that was after that year and a half when I realized how much I enjoyed it and how I didn't miss not being part of the, say, the television or arts industry or community.
I think that you already answered the question that I'm going to ask you, because you mentioned about all this transition with the um, facts. But if you've seen the field evolve dramatically, well, over the years, what's been the most surprising or impactful change you've witnessed in PR, and how did it influence your approach to the work, Martin?
You know what? I would say the most significant one wasn't necessarily AI. It was really more social media. And the reason I found social media changed communications, at least for me, is because it gave us a voice. So in the past, we were always in the background prior to social media, but on social media, we had personalities and characteristics, and we could write things. I created my first blog in, I think, 2007 or 8, somewhere around there, and started writing and realized, okay, I've always enjoyed writing. And that was a part of communications I probably liked the most. That and talking to journalists and media and influencers later. But I found that having the ability to sort of come out of the shadows and say, I'm working on this project, or here's something we're doing, and interacting more transparently, I think that was really great for the communications profession. It also showed us that we didn't necessarily only need media to reach the audiences that we're trying to reach. Media was and is still a really powerful intermediary, but we could have more direct relationships, similar to what marketing has always tried to do. They haven't always done it well, but they've always tried to do that. So for me, yeah, social media and being able to not only write, but publish and distribute content.
I think now with the future is Generation Z with all the social media, as you
Yeah.
mentioned.
So, with the rise of digital and social media, PR professionals have had to adapt quickly, as you already said. So, what do you think are the most essential skills that PR students should focus on mastering today, right now?
It's a great question. I think the first skill on this one is one that hasn't changed, and that is curiosity. I think you need to be really curious about the world and interested in finding out not only what's going on, because what is happening in the world affects whatever you're doing for your client or your organization, and also affects how you can position your messages to the people you want to reach. So, for instance, right now, there's a lot of political turmoil around the world, and you need to take that into account and maybe adapt your approach a little if you're, say, launching a brand new product. Whereas maybe a year ago, you would have done it slightly differently. So I think curiosity is important. And I said adaptability is really, really important too. Knowing that, okay, this is our idea, something external changes it, and something that we have no control over. And if we just keep going in that same line, we may not be successful. So we need to always, almost like being fluid in our communications, adapt, watch, monitor. So curiosity, adaptability, and then I think a hunger for learning. Because right now, well, really, ever since social and digital media came onto the scene, so 2004, 5, 6, 7, and it took a while to really have the industry adopt it. We needed to learn new things and learn new technologies. And I think that is exactly the same with artificial intelligence. Nobody really, unless you're a computer scientist, but even then, you don't really know how to get a fantastic output from a prompt, for example. So we're all new and we all have to keep learning that. And I think that lifelong learning is something that is really an important characteristic. So curiosity, adaptability, technical know-how, and then lifelong learning.
Okay. Thank you so much for letting us know about that.
Thank you, Martin. My next question that I have for you is more about the topic with teaching. You've also been heavily involved in teaching and mentoring PRE students.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest gap between classroom learning and the realities of the PR industry?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm going to ask it back to you after, because you were a student and then you went out into the industry. I think it is really difficult now, more than say 10 or 12 years ago, to keep up with the pace of change because everyone's still learning. And any kind of academic institution, you have your curriculum that is set and you have to get approved, either by the institution has to approve the course. And so I think it's really important that instructors keep an open mind and adapt because I look back at different courses I've done. So the course that I taught you, Carolina, if I looked at that outline today, I'd go, whoa, okay, X, 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 X. Oh, maybe keep that part. It really changes. And I think unless communications instructors keep up with the pace of change and keep adapting their lectures, that if they don't, there's a bigger gap because industry wants one thing and you're learning something else. But there are certain other things like theory, for example, and best practices and case studies about how what we have always done or what we used to do, how we evolved. I think that's important too. So you need the past, what work, you need the foundations, strategy, theory, and figuring out how to apply it. And then learning how to use the tools. And that's not easy. It's something that I know I struggle with every single time I teach a course because I think, okay, what parts of this lecture do I need to update? Usually it's a substantial amount every semester. It's not something that's static. And that's exciting, but hopefully you're updating it at the same pace that industry is evolving. Because if my updates are too far ahead, that's not good. You come out expecting, oh, okay, great, we just have to press a button and an AI system will write everything for us, which would be a terrible situation, I think, but whatever. And if I'm not quick enough, then you're not getting what you want. And it's a balance. The other thing is in 12 or 14 weeks, it's not a lot of time to learn something. But hopefully if it's working right, the classroom opens a student's eyes and mind to something that they can hopefully use in the workplace.
Yeah.
Now, so Carolina, if you don't mind, what were your experiences? You graduated with a certificate. You started the certificate in what I would call normal times.
Yes.
You know, when it was just in-class learning, you had to switch mid-semester. I think it was just over halfway through the semester, like right after reading week or
Yeah,
study week.
it was very challenged to switch from in-person certificate school to immediately online and learn very fast. Zoom, Teams, and also challenge for the professors because nobody were expecting that. And challenge to put into practice the skills and the knowledge that we have learned or that we were learning via books and put it and work in teams with the use of technology. And also when I began looking for jobs, I realized that also a lot of agencies were looking for experience with, well, by that time they were beginning with the influencer
Yes.
relations. And I remember, oh no, we never talk about, yes, influencers, but it was just a few sentences or knowledge or expertise from our professors. But then in the industry, I realized that all the agencies were working with influencers, right? So that is like the gap that you mentioned.
Yes. And that was media relations, right? Because media relations became media and influencer relations plus influencer marketing because there's a paid component, something that in at least in Canada and North America, you didn't have that paid component. You couldn't pay a journalist to say, "Oh, come to my event, here's $50, write a nice article
Yes.
about it." Whereas with influencers, it's complex. There's the relationship, but
Mhm.
there's also the paid component because they're not being paid by a company to write about you or to create a video about you. Yeah, it's funny. I've integrated a lot more influencer relations into what I'm teaching on the marketing side, the digital marketing side. But the other thing is now with synthetic influencers and AI agents, that's going to change again.
Yeah.
And nobody really knows how it's going to play out yet. So
Yes.
it's kind of, hopefully we can stay one step ahead of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone is just trying to work with it as it goes because every new day you get to see a new like feature of AI coming in, and then you have to adapt to that. So as you said, adaptability is really important because otherwise we won't be able to go with it.
Yeah, and figuring out um, the difference between the hype, because Silicon Valley has so much hype about what they're doing. Oh, this is coming. This is going to be great. This is going to change everything. And then you get the tool and you have to actually try it out like ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude or Gemini and figure out, okay, what really works and how can I use it in a way that helps me
Yeah.
and makes me better rather than saying, okay, I'm using it, check mark, check mark, check mark. All I'm doing is producing more mediocre stuff that's good enough. How can you use it in a way that pushes you to do something better?
Yeah, how to use it for our betterment. So there's also another question. So a lot of us worry about how to stand out when we are just starting in our careers. So what are some of the practical steps that you would recommend for students like me and our other members of the professional and coffee that you would recommend to make an impact in the field?
Think building your presence on digital media is very important. So pick your channels because you can't use all of them. That would be a full-time job. But and and again, it's up to an individual's choice. Some of my students and some friends of mine don't want their Instagram profile, for example, to be public. You want to have it private because of the types of photos you're sharing, and that's fine. But pick a couple of platforms where you can be public. Twitter, X used to be a great one for that. Now, I wouldn't say it necessarily is, but LinkedIn's great. And so
Yeah.
when you're going through LinkedIn, one, it's a fantastic hub for jobs because you can see all these opportunities to be hired there. But I think even more than that, it's a way to showcase how you think. So starting with your profile, you want to make sure that it's set up properly with a great header image at the top. That's part of your story. Like, how does it complement what you do or what you can offer? You want to make sure your profile picture is clear and shows you somewhat professional. On LinkedIn, you don't want to have a picture of someone, say, by the beach necessarily, because that wouldn't be appropriate for that setting if you wouldn't dress like that, say, to go to work. And then you want to fill in your about section. I think that's one of those parts of LinkedIn where you're telling people about what you do. That's your opportunity to tell your story, to talk about who you are and what you can bring to organizations. And farther down, you want to start trying to create content. So not just sharing things or saying, oh, congratulations, that's great, things like that. You want to create content that is somewhat meaningful and shows how you think. So, for example, Trilla Chen, you're starting out with a fintech
Yeah.
soon. So you may want to find some of the thought leaders in that industry and start following them. Not necessarily connecting to them, although you may want to do that too, but follow them, find out about the types of things that they're writing, they're sharing, maybe comment from time to time when you have something to add. Again, you want to go beyond the, oh, this was such a great post, which is nice, but you want to show why that's a great post. It's really interesting because X, Y, and Z. And then all of a sudden, you're starting to use that platform to build relationships. And when you go in, say, for a job interview, people might remember you because you interacted with them online or with their company. I think that that's a really useful way of being able to use digital to build your presence in a way that helps you online, but also in the real world.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Also, throughout your career, you have worked with a wide range of clients and projects. Is there any one campaign that really stands out to you as a defining moment for major learning experiences?
Yeah, I can tell you one that really stood out for us. So we worked for a my agency was the agency of record for a large consumer packaged goods company that produced a line of shampoos. And what we did oftentimes is when we would have, say, a celebrity hairstylist that was associated with the brand, we'd be able to bring them to Canada, set up interviews with media, the beauty media, the magazine writers, and hopefully they would try the product, write about it, send them. And we'd often do these events where they'd get tips and different things like that. So for one of those events, I had read an article about a Canadian startup called Modiface that was able to use, it wasn't called augmented reality then. This is in about 2008, believe it or not. But it was like, it would, you could show it your image and it would make changes if you described your change. It really was augmented reality. Anyway, we talked with them and we developed this augmented reality application. It wasn't an application, it sat on a big computer that had to be rolled in. Couldn't, it was too much computation for the smartphones of those days. And so it was rolled in with a giant screen. And the journalists would look in front of it and tussle their hair, so kind of go like that. And it would show them different styles that they could achieve with this hair care product. And we thought this was really quite incredible. We thought, oh, the company should take this and send it out to stores, but it was just too far ahead of its time. Meanwhile, what happened to Modiface? They were a company that were bought by L'Oreal, who was not my client, and L'Oreal integrated all their technology into its makeup. All the augmented reality, try before you buy applications. So we kind of felt, oh, that was pretty exciting. We were there at the beginning, maybe a little too early, as I said, but it was a really fun and exciting project. And the journalists and the influencers who were there were quite surprised by how well the technology worked.
That's really interesting. And especially when you were so ahead of time, even then.
Well, it shows, but you know what? That goes to curiosity
Yeah.
because I had read this article and I thought, oh, this is kind of interesting. I'll just call up the company. And that's in the days where, a lot of the articles were still in print.
Yeah.
And so I just called them, ended up speaking to the founder. We talked to our client, and it just sort of happened based on curiosity, just based on being interested in something. So I guess really, if I think about it, I was probably interested in AI way before I started my master's.
Martin, now that we were talking about influencers, the way PR professionals build relationships with the media has also evolved over time, right? Now with influencers.
Yes.
So what's your take on how to effectively connect with journalists and now influencers in today's landscape?
Well, I don't do a lot of media relations anymore. Again, when I was doing it, it was really picking up the phone and calling them and leaving a message and building a relationship. I think the fundamentals still stay the same. You want to build a relationship. And this is something that was always true. The principle of reciprocity, which is if I give you something, chances are you're likely to give me something in return. That's common across many, many, many cultures. And I think that works well for media or influencer relations. So if your first experience with a media person or as an influencer is asking them to do something, you know, you why would they want to do it necessarily? So how can you figure out what can you give them? Even if it's an interesting story idea, an original angle, or maybe an opportunity they may not have had access to before, what can you give them that will make them interested? And I think reciprocity is so important. Also, respect. So if you write a note to a journalist or an influencer and you don't hear back, that's okay. They're always busy in their inboxes or their social media feeds, if you're messaging them, are inundated. And so sometimes they don't always notice, and it's fine to follow up. But after, one follow up
Yeah.
and time goes by and you don't hear back from them, maybe that's an implied no. That doesn't mean you can't contact them again, but it's not a great idea to keep forwarding a message 3 and 4 times. Oh, did you miss my message? Oh, did you miss my message? Because that's not building a relationship. So you have to understand, and that's hard for a junior person who has to achieve certain results to explain that to your manager, but the manager should know this.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was always like that, but I think it's much more challenging because there are fewer media people. The influencers, many of them are still hobbyists, especially the micro influencers and nano influencers. They're starting to become professionals, but they're not necessarily trained journalists. And so it's challenging navigating that landscape. I think it was so much easier when I started out. I mean, there were days when I was doing entertainment publicity, I still can't believe this. I could book 10 interviews in one day.
Wow. No, no.
And yeah, really, it's incredible. Driving up to one TV station. This is in the days where there was like TV news programs that needed guests. Go to one TV station, and then another radio station, and then a print outlet, and then another print outlet, then a magazine, another TV, and you just drive around. At the end of the day, the writer or whoever it was that I was helping publicize, they were exhausted. So was I. But wow, you would see the results, and
Mhm.
that's really changed.
Yeah, now we have a lot of nano influencers, as you said, or persons that have just started in front of the telephone, and they have called themselves influencers, and then you have to educate people how to build relationship. Yeah, it's really challenging right now.
So, sometimes PR can feel overwhelming with tight deadlines and high stakes. How do you manage and maintain a healthy work-life balance while staying productive as well?
What's a healthy work-life balance? I don't know. No, just kidding. Uh, I think you have to find a balance that works for you and not always operate in crisis mode. And I've seen this at a number of agencies that I worked at, or with some people I know. If you're a type A person, you're always, oh, got to do this, got to do this. I think you have to balance and say, okay, this is what has to get done today. This is what has to get done tomorrow, knowing there's some flexibility. Not always put yourself under that pressure where you feel like you're always behind. I think we have to give ourselves, and again, this goes to the leadership of wherever you work. Hopefully, they understand that. And I think a lot more leaders do nowadays and don't expect you to work 15 hours a day, day in, day out. I mean, if there's a big project and you're coming close to launch, yes, you're going to have to work hard for a certain period of time, but then it goes, almost like in a wave. Okay, the wave is high, and it goes back, and you can recover. But I think it's important to figure out what works for you as an individual, and it's different for everybody. And to know that not every job is the right fit for every individual. That's a hard one to get behind, because you think, oh, this is a perfect job, and yet it's just not right for you. That's okay. Might be the wrong company, might be the wrong leadership. There's a whole bunch of other factors. And to know when it's time for you to say, okay, I'm going to be proactive. I really don't like this. I'm going to leave and find something else. And that's hard, and it's really, really challenging. But I think it helps us balance our lives, and make it so that we enjoy what we do. If you're not enjoying what you're doing at work, maybe it's time to rethink things.
Yeah, that's true. You always have to enjoy what you're doing, otherwise, it's gonna end up as nothing.
Yeah, now that doesn't mean you have to enjoy it 100% of the time. It would be nice, but on balance, like the majority should be
Yeah.
enjoyment. The other thing I say to students is the only one certainty of any job that you get is that you'll leave it. And know at some point, and knowing that kind of hopefully gives you a different attitude towards employers
Mhm.
when you're interviewing.
Yeah. So finally, the last question is, if you would go back and give yourself a advice to young version of yourself who was just starting in the world of PR, what would it be?
Get into PR earlier. That's the first thing I probably would have said to myself. You should do this earlier. I When I started out, I worked in an ad agency for a year, and I quite liked that. But then I went back into more TV writing and different arts things. And I think had I kept on that path, I'm not saying it would have been different, but it might have been a little bit easier for me during those moments of transition in my career. The other thing is keep an open mind, because you never know what one opportunity will lead you to. If all you're doing is looking like this rather than going, oh, I could go here and maybe here, you might be missing things that you really enjoy. Maybe that's the advice, the second one, not the first one.
Well, thank you, Martin, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with our audience. Thank you so much, Turlo Chan, for co-hosting this coffee chat with me. Before leaving this episode, where can we find you, Martin and Turlo Chan, on social media?
You can find me on LinkedIn by the name of Tirlochan Kaur.
And I'm on LinkedIn, Martin Waxman. I also have on LinkedIn a digital marketing trends newsletter that you can subscribe to. And you can check out my LinkedIn learning courses on digital marketing, social media, and a number of courses on AI for marketers and communicators.
Yeah, and please go take one course with Martin. He's very good.
Oh, thank you.
Well, that concludes our conversation with Martin Waxman, digital and social media strategist, LinkedIn learning instructor, and digital marketing professor, and Tirlochan Kaur, a public relations student from Humber College. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and podcast platforms for more episodes, and join us next time as we explore more topics in the world of public relations, marketing, and communications. Until then, take care and bye for now.